I watched this movie a few years ago with Dustin Hoffman called Outbreak. And this whole movie, he was in this virus protection suit, and he was fighting against the Ebola virus, which was this deadly virus from Africa. And the entire movie was kind of this, made me question, okay, life and monkeys and everything else. But if you don't know the story of the movie, there were these monkeys that were being sold as pets here in the United States. And unbeknownst to them, one of the monkeys was infected with the Ebola virus, and they didn't even know it. So the monkey comes to the United States. You can figure out the rest of the movie from there. Monkey comes to the United States, scratches man, monkey scratches man, man kisses girl, entire continent completely infected with the virus. And one of the most dramatic scenes in the movie was they were at this movie theater, and at this movie theater, there was this man that sneezed. And as he sneezed, the camera followed the virus across this packed movie theater until he got to this laughing mouth of this unsuspected moviegoer, and sure enough, right then and then, infected right then and there. Now, we use these words like epidemic or pandemic to be able to explain whenever there's a virus or there's sickness or there's a deadly disease that just continues to spread beyond control. But what if, just for a moment, we were to change the context? And what if, instead of there being this virus that spreads, this deadly infection, what if instead of spreading sickness, it was actually something that could spread hope? What if there was this virus that instead of causing a physical catastrophe could start a spiritual revival? What if it wasn't death that was spreading? What if it was life that was spreading? You know, my son, he has these allergies, and ever since he's been born, he's had these really bad allergies. He's allergic to nuts, he's allergic to eggs, and then allergic to dairy. Now, when you think about dairy, okay, it's like ice cream. He's allergic to ice cream. Or when you think about pizza, he's allergic to the cheese that's on top of pizza. So every time we go out to a restaurant, it's like a major ordeal for us because we're like, hey, does that bread have dairy in it? And they're like, I don't know for sure. Well, he's allergic. And so next thing you know, they'll come out and they bring us the package, and we're looking through the package right there saying, okay, no milk, no dairy. Okay, we should be good to go. Or other times sorry, Braden, you just got to have just the meat, okay? And can't put cheese on it. Just put some mustard on it and just enjoy that meat today, Braden. It's going to be a great day for you. Well, my wife was actually with one of her friends here at the church, and this lady actually told my wife about this institute in Long Beach that has a 99.7% success rate when it comes to curing allergies. 99.7%. I mean, that's pretty amazing. So sure enough, my wife, she got online and she began to research this institute in Long Beach. And sure enough, there are people that travel from all over the world to get here just to be able to get cured of their allergy challenges and problems that they have. So there was over 1,000 people on the wait list. So my son is now number 775, okay, on the wait list. And we are praying that he's not part of the 0.03%, okay, of the population. But we have a dream as a family, and Shannon and Braden have this dream that if he gets into the Allergy Institute, and if everything works out good, that they're going to eat lasagna and pizza together in celebration. And it will be an oh happy day, right? Well, I'm at the park a couple months ago, and I'm with my daughter, Nicoley, and Nicoley is 5 years old, so she's just playing, running around everywhere. And there's this other lady that's also there at the park that has a son who's about 5 years of age as well. And so we just started talking back and forth, and I don't know how it came up, but it came up that her son has an allergy, and he is allergic to nuts, he's allergic to dairy, and he's allergic to eggs. And at that moment, I said, I have a son just like this. Like, I know this is crazy. And then I began to tell her about this Allergy Institute in Long Beach. And I was like, listen, you've got to know about this place. We've heard nothing but great things. And we're on the Facebook page. And we constantly look over and over at all these other stories. They're just like our son. And we continue to hear these stories of people left and right that no longer have these allergies any longer. I was like, I've got to get your email. I've got to share with you this Allergy Institute place. So she said, sure, here it is. I want that. I need that. Like, this is a major issue. Like, this is a major challenge in our life. I said, I'm telling you, all right, I think that this is something that could be able to help. Don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure, man, from everything that we've witnessed and everything that we've seen. So sure enough, she sends me her email. So I kind of respond back to her and say, hey, here it is, and here's all the information. And she was pumped about that. She sent me an email back. That's spreading good news. Now, did you know that there's a word in the New Testament called the gospel? And maybe you've heard about the gospel, and you say, what does the word gospel mean? The word gospel means good news. It means that whenever you know good news, you share good news. The first 4 books of the New Testament are called the Gospels. It is the sharing of the good news of Jesus Christ. You have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They all were eyewitnesses. They were there in the life and time of Jesus, and they wrote it down so that you and I can read and discover this good news in this man named Jesus Christ. Then you get to this book of Acts. So it goes Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Then there's the book of Acts. And the book of Acts is when the church started. So they had shared the good news, and they had shared it with so many people that all of a sudden they started an ecclesia, okay, a community, a gathering of people that was the first local church. And then the church began to grow. It began to expand. It was the good news, if you will. It was an outbreak. These were sneezers. These were people that had good news. They couldn't keep it to themselves. They had to continue to share this good news with other people. And you know, what kind of person would I be to be at the park and this lady tell me all about her son's allergies and the challenges and the difficulties, and for me just to be silent and say nothing about this good news that I have that could potentially be life-changing for their family? No, I had to share the good news. You and I also have good news. And his name is Jesus Christ. And it is the gospel. It is the good news that is the life-changing hope of mankind. But here's the problem. The epidemic has been contained. I recently read that the average church will see 2 people find and follow Jesus and make a decision to get baptized in a given year. The average church sees 2 people make a decision like this. Can I tell you that's because the epidemic has been contained? It's no longer good news. We just kind of keep it to ourselves. And that's a problem. And I believe that God has called us here at Crosspoint Church to be the epicenter, the point of the outbreak. And he's called us to unleash the virus, to share the gospel, to share the good news of Jesus Christ. And I'm so passionate about this that we have 8 core values of our church. And I'm going to share one of those core values. It's called evangelism. And evangelism is simply the gospel. It is sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. And for each one of our values, we have a statement. And this is a statement that makes my heart beat fast. And I hope it makes your heart beat fast as well. So I want to ask you just to read it with me together. It's on the screen. You guys ready? Here we go. We are... Hold on. You're not convinced of anything right now. I'm not convinced. I'm convinced you're tired. That's what I'm convinced of. All right, so let's say it now with some conviction. You guys ready? We are convinced that Jesus is the hope of the world. We will do anything short of sin to make it hard for people to go to hell. So the question is this: are you convinced that Jesus is the hope of the world? You guys are way better than the other service. Don't tell them I said that, okay? But they were just kind of like bumps on the log, okay? But this is the 11 o'clock service, all right? You guys are convinced that Jesus is the hope of the world, right? So if you're convinced, we will do anything short of sin to make it hard for people to go to hell. Now, I realize that this isn't popular. People don't talk a lot about hell today. Matter of fact, you don't even hear hell talked about in church very often. But the reality is this. Every single one of us are going to die. I recently checked statistics, and they tell us 1 out of every 1 dies. It's ludicrous for us not to prepare for the inevitable. And one of these days, when we breathe our last breath, we will either A, spend forever in a place called heaven, or we will B, spend forever in a place called hell. There is no C. And if we don't choose A, we automatically choose B. And you have to understand that our culture has changed. Our culture has evolved when it comes to faith. It used to be that truth was outside of us, and that we understood there was something bigger, something greater than what was inside of us. Truth was outside of us, and inside of us were our feelings. Those were our emotions. And our feelings and our emotions drive our behaviors, but what we would do is we would bend our feelings and our emotions to what was truth to be able to make choices, to be able to say, this is the right choice, this is a wrong choice, and we would bend our feelings and emotions. That's the way our culture used to operate. That's the way our culture used to work. But our culture has now changed. Truth is no longer outside of us. Truth is now in our culture inside of us. And we believe that we are truth. And our culture believes across the board that what I feel and what I think is the truth. So what's true for me is true for me, and what's true for you is true for you. And there is no longer a culture of absolute truth. So we don't see these as feelings anymore inside of us. We see that these are truths. And so I'm okay with you as long as you're okay with me. But if you see anything that comes in conflict with what I believe is the truth inside of me, then you are now intolerant of me. So I've got to back away from you, and I've got to make sure that I go a different direction of you. And this really leads to individualism, to where there's a lot of individualism of what is true for me is what's true for me, and what's true for you is true for you. We live in a postmodern culture. This is called postmodernism. A professor of religion every year, he starts his class off, and here's how he starts his class off. He asks all these freshmen to get out a piece of paper, and he says, I want to give you 2-question test today. And he says, the first question is this. He says, I have a ball of gumballs, a jar full of gumballs. He said, how many gumballs are in this jar? Would you write down the number? And then the second question he asks is this. What's your favorite kind of music? And they write down their answers. And then he says, when it comes to faith, do you believe it's more like the first question? Or do you believe it's more like the second question? Because the first question has a legitimate right and wrong answer. The second question is all based upon the inner truth that is inside of us. And I believe with all of my heart that truth is not inside of me. I believe that truth comes outside of me. And I believe that whenever I understand the truth of who Jesus is, when Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No man comes into the Father but by me. So what that means for my life is that I have to allow my feelings and my flesh and my desires to bend towards not my own truth. Some people say, just do what makes you happy. Or don't let anybody tell you what's right or what's wrong. No, I have to bend my feelings and my emotions and the things that my desires want to do based upon what is ultimately truth. And how do I find that for my life? I find that in Jesus Christ. And here's the deal. Whenever you begin to anchor yourself on truth that is found outside of us, there's some benefits. There are some benefits that we have that others don't have. And these are the benefits that we get. We can have purpose that is beyond ourselves. And in this world of understanding that your truth is inside of you, I also recognize that we have a world full of people that don't have purpose. They cannot find their meaning. And you will not find your meaning whenever you're looking for it internally inside of yourself. But can I tell you, when you look to God, that's when you can find purpose. That's when you can find meaning for your life. It's an incredible benefit that we get as followers of Jesus Christ. The second benefit that we get as well is satisfaction and contentment. We find satisfaction and contentment not in who we are, not in our circumstances and our situations, but we find what is called joy. Joy is what gives us strength even when we're in the valley. Most people in this world are looking for happiness, and happiness is based upon our happenings. So if our happenings are good, we're happy. If our happenings are bad, we're discouraged, we're depressed, we're down, we're defeated. But God says the joy of the Lord can be your strength. That when you need strength in the middle of your valley, you can find that as a follower of Jesus Christ through the joy of the Lord, which is outside of you, not what is inside of you. And here's the third thing that you find. When you understand truth is outside of you, you understand that you can have a secure identity in who God says that you are. But when you are searching for your own identity of who you are based upon your own truth, you're going to live a life of ups and downs and not understanding who you are, whose you are, why you're created, and understanding your identity. But as followers of Jesus, when we know Jesus, we know his character, we know his word, we can now understand our identity. And the final thing is this. When you begin to understand truth is outside of us instead of inside of us, you get hope to be able to handle pain and suffering. You get hope to have help through pain and suffering. When it's just you inside and you go through pain and suffering, you're going to go down because you're riding on your emotions and your feelings. But when you understand that there's someone bigger than you, there's someone greater than you that can give you hope, it brings you incredible satisfaction in life. This morning I came down and I was getting ready to leave, and my son Braden said, "Dad, you know your memory verse?" I said, "What memory verse?" Sadie says, "The verse of the month. Do you know the verse of the month by heart?" "Yes, you'll know that you're my disciples if you show love one for another." And Braden says, "Well, I know my memory verse too." I said, "Well, what's your memory verse?" He's in Doc 14, 1st through 4th grade today. And right now, right around this moment right now, he's quoting the verse. And some of your kids are quoting the same verse today as well. And their memory verse is this: "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart because I have overcome the world." And I want our 1st through 4th graders to know that they're going to go through trouble in this world. They're going to go through challenges, and we cannot insulate them from the challenges and the problems and the struggles of life, but to take heart because Jesus has overcome this world. We can go through pain, we can go through suffering, but we believe that it's not dependent upon us and what we have on inside of us, but it is dependent upon one that is outside of us, which is Jesus Christ. And he went to the grave, but guess what happened? He rose again, church. Next Sunday, I'm starting a brand new series called How to Be Brave. How to be brave. And we're going to go through a 4-week journey together about courage and how do we become brave in this journey that we're in as we go through troubles. And about 9 weeks ago, I started praying, saying, "God, what is the verse that you want to lead us to? God, where are you guiding us as a church when it comes to Easter Sunday?" And this is the verse that God gave me. And I believe that this is a verse that God not only gave to me, this is a verse that God gave to you because he knew you would be sitting here today. And he knew who's going to be here next week. And there is power that's found in this verse. It's in Philippians. In Philippians, it's on the screen, chapter 3 and verse 10 and 11. This is awesome. Paul says, "I want to know Christ." My question for you is this: do you want to know Christ? Do you want to know Jesus? Do you want to know somebody that's greater than what's inside of you? He says, "I want to know Christ, and I want to experience this mighty power." This is a power that's not found within. This is a power that's only found from above. And the word power in the Greek is the word dunamis. It's where we get the word dynamite. You want to talk about something powerful? Is there anything more powerful than dynamite? It is explosive power that can blow up your destructive habits. It is incredible power to give you boldness and confidence that you've never had before. And Paul said, I want to know Christ, and I want to experience the mighty power that raised Jesus from the dead. Amen. That's some dunamis, dynamite power. And then he says this, and this is interesting. Paul says, I want to suffer with Jesus. Now, I can't tell you the last time I prayed and said, God, I want to suffer. I don't pray that prayer. I don't think you probably do either. But here's what he was saying. He wasn't praying asking for suffering. He was in the middle of his suffering. And in the middle of his suffering, he's saying, as I go through this suffering, God, I know you also went through suffering. See, before you can understand the resurrection, you have to understand the cross. That's what this Holy Week is all about. And some of you right now are going through suffering, and your prayer should be like Paul's prayer to say, God, I'm going through suffering, but God, I know you went through suffering as well, but I want to suffer with you, sharing in your death. I want to die to my sin, myself, and my stuff in the midst of this suffering. See, I have all these rights and all these reasons why I'm right, but God, I want to die to all that because I want to know you. And I want to know your mighty power. So I want to die to my flesh. Sometimes we get fleshy. So I want to die to my flesh. I want to suffer with you, sharing your death, so that one way or another, I will experience the resurrection from the dead. That I can go through suffering, but I don't go through suffering without hope. Amen. Romans chapter 1 and verse 15. Here's what happened. Paul, he began to spread this virus of Jesus. And he says, I'm so eager. I've got to tell you this message. I'm a sneezer. I'm creating an outbreak. I am so eager to come to you in Rome too. I can't just let it be contained here. I want to preach the gospel, the gospels, the good news. And then he says, for I am not ashamed of the good news about Christ. He says, I'm not ashamed. He says, I'm putting the Jesus jersey on. Listen, I'll be a Laker fan even if they didn't make it to the playoffs. I'm all in. I know. Had a bad season. I know. We went down. But guess what? I'm not going to put the jersey in the back of the closet and wait for winning season to pull it back out. I'm pulling it out in the middle of my suffering. In the middle of the challenges. In the middle of the pain. I'm believing there's hope. And that's exactly what Paul says. Paul says, I'm putting the Jesus jersey on because I'm not ashamed of the good news about Jesus Christ. And he says, it is the power. There's that word again. The word dunamis, dynamite. It's the power of God at work, and it is saving, catch this, this is good. It saves everyone who believes. It says it can be the Jew, Gentile. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter what past problems you've been through. It doesn't matter what sin that you've done or that you've committed. He says, you want to raise the new life, you have this kind of dunamis power, and it's only found in Jesus Christ. Doesn't matter how much money's in your bank account. It's available and it is free to all. He says this good news that he's talking about is how God makes us right in his sight. This is accomplished from start to finish by faith. And the scriptures say it's through faith that a righteous person has life. It's not based upon your good deeds. It's not based upon your works. It's based upon the faith that you have in who Jesus is. I want to know Christ. He says in verse 20, he says, my ambition, my heartbeat, I've got to get this outbreak going. I've got to sneeze. I've got to infect. I've got to let everybody know. This is my ambition. It's always been to preach the gospel. What's the gospel? It's the good news. But it's only good news if it gets there in time, right? It's not good news if it doesn't get there in time. I got to preach the good news where the name of Christ has never been heard. I can't wait for Easter next Sunday because many of you are inviting friends and family and people that have never heard this good news about Jesus Christ. And next Sunday on Easter, they're going to hear the good news. He says, I've been following the plan spoken of in the scripture where it says, those that have never been told about him are going to see. Next Sunday, people are going to have their eyes opened, and they're going to put their trust in Jesus, and they're going to ask Jesus to forgive them of their sin and take full control of their life. And their eyes are going to be open. They're going to get a new set of lenses. And it says, and those that never heard of him are going to understand. Next Sunday on Easter, man, I believe there's going to be people sitting where you're sitting right now, that all of a sudden a light bulb is going to go off. It's going to be like, it was Jesus. That's who I was missing. That's what I need. Acts chapter 19. He says in Acts chapter 19 and verse 8, he says, Paul went to the synagogue and he preached boldly for the next 3 months, arguing persuasively about the kingdom of God. But some people became stubborn, rejecting his message and publicly speaking against the way. Listen, some people got infected. Some people became infuriated. And that's the same true today. Some people are going to reject the message of Jesus Christ. Some people say, no, it's about me. It's about myself, what I think, what I believe. And they're going to reject it. And it says, Paul, he left the synagogue, took the believers with him. He didn't just continue to argue with these people. Then he held daily discussions at the lecture hall of Tyrannus. So he left the church, left the synagogue, went down to the local community college, and set up some classes on Jesus 101, Jesus 201, Jesus 301, Jesus 401. He said, we've got to get the good news out to people. How do we prepare for Easter? How do we become these sneezers? Number one is this. You have to choose to be a carrier of Jesus. You have to choose to be a carrier of Jesus. You have to let your light shine. And by the way, you don't have to go to seminary in order to be a carrier of Jesus Christ. You don't have to have all this knowledge and know exactly what to say. No, you can become a carrier of Jesus. They said the disciples were unlearned men, but they said there's something different about them because they know Jesus. And next week, it's the infection point. 1300 North Kellogg, right here. Easter Sunday. Dr. Tom Rainer, he says this, 82% of people that don't go to church will attend church if someone would just invite them. 82%. Who are you inviting? Who are you impacting? You know that lady at the park I was telling you about that I said, hey, I've got to let you know about, this, I got to let you know about this Allergy Institute. I also said, I've got to let you know about Jesus as well. And so I had a faith conversation with her. And whenever I got home, I said, I sent her the email, I sent her everything out. I said, hey, and I want to invite you to come on Easter Sunday. And she emailed me back and she said, thank you so much. I went home and I told my husband about our meeting about two things. The first was the allergy. The second was we've got to go to Cross Point on Easter Sunday. People will come, but we've got to make sure that we share the good news. And I've told you before, you don't have to be a preacher. Nobody's calling you to be me. Listen, you do the reaching, I'll do the preaching. Is that cool? All right? I'll be the preacher, but we do have to infect people. We have to let our light shine. So I want us to prepare for Easter. This week is called Holy Week. How do we prepare ourselves as we lead up into Easter? I want to challenge you to do a Bible reading plan this next week. And this is a Bible reading plan called the 7 Mile Miracle. It's on YouVersion. How many of you have the YouVersion Bible reading app? Would you just raise your hand? Listen, if it's been helpful for you, will you just raise your hand really high? It's free. If you don't have it, you need to download YouVersion. It's a Bible reading plan, and then just search 7 Mile Miracle. And what this Bible reading plan is going to do is for the next 7 days, it's going to tell you what happened every day in Jesus' life leading up to the resurrection. Then I want to challenge you to come on Friday. This Friday night at 6:30, we're going to have a Good Friday service. And if you love worship, how many of you love worship here? That's what I thought. You're going to love Good Friday because we're going to worship. We're going to sing about the cross. I'm going to speak about the cross. And we're going to prepare our hearts for the resurrection on Sunday. But before you can understand the resurrection, you have to understand the cross. You have to understand what Jesus did on the cross for you. So we're going to have a Good Friday service. We've got some special things planned that we want you to be a part of. And then the next thing that I want to challenge you to do as well is to get baptized. If you haven't been baptized, that's your next spiritual step. And next week, we're going to be baptizing people. I believe there's no better day to get baptized than Easter Sunday. It's the picture of the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus. You can sign up for that on your connection card as well. And then here's some inside stuff. Next week, I've been doing this for 10 years. We do a spiritual survey. And I want to ask you to participate in a spiritual survey just so that the people around you will say, hey, I can do this. Everybody in this church is doing this. So if we got 1,500 of us doing it here, then everybody else will kind of join in as well. So make sure you take the spiritual survey. Next week you say, oh, they have all my contact information. Yeah, we do. It's not for you. We're trying to get the other people that don't know Jesus to be able to take a spiritual survey, and many of them are going to indicate that they're becoming followers of Jesus for the very first time next Sunday. Then ask God, who do you want me to invite? Who do you want me to invite? Call them this week. Send them a text today. And we're going to do something we've never done before. It's called the thunderclap. Now, let me explain the thunderclap, all right? Here's how it works. On the count of 3, I want you to clap. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Wow, that was pretty good. All right, let's do it twice now on the count of 3. You ready? 1, 2, 3. This is fun. Let's do it 3 times. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3. Here's the thunderclap. The thunderclap is when we all come together. It's powerful. When we all come together, we can make a noise that we've never been able to make on our own. And so I want to leverage some social media. And I believe that we can be able to reach thousands of people just by leveraging us here. So here's what I want to challenge you to do. Do the thunderclap. So before your head hits the pillow tomorrow night, I want to challenge you to get on Instagram or get on Facebook Live, and I want you just to make a video about what God's doing in your life. Doesn't have to be long. Just say, hey, this is what God's doing in my life, and I want to invite you to Easter at Crosspoint with me next week. And you can let them know we rented out the whole Sky Zone, so all the kids are going to Sky Zone for free. They're going to have their own Easter service. All the younger kids, they've got an Easter egg hunt. We're going to have all that stuff as well, too. But I want us to do the thunderclap together. So on the count of 3 times. You ready? 1, 2, 3. So I want to challenge you. Listen, you guys, I get all your stuff, all right? You guys post about like panda bears. You post about lip sync battles. You post about essential oils. Okay, you guys post about all kinds of stuff. And you know what? The world's better for it. Keep it going, all right? Keep it going. But don't fail to post about the most important thing, which is this message of Jesus Christ. The last thing I want to challenge you to volunteer. We got 4 services. Man, we need you to smile, greet, love people, parking, so many different things, and there's a lot of different opportunities that are inside your program. Find one that fits for you. Worship 1 hour, serve another hour. Listen, if you say, well, what do? We have a lunch planned right after the service. We've got pizza coming in and free childcare, and we want to take about an hour, no longer than an hour, just to tell you more about Easter and how you can become part of the story that God is writing. So even if you didn't sign up, that's okay. Show up right next door. We will do that. Hey, I want to ask us to stand to our feet right now. And I want to end this service a little differently. I did this last service, and it's kind of spontaneous, and I want to do it again this service. I just felt God's power and spirit on this thing. Would you just close your eyes for a moment? I want you to think back to the time when you asked Jesus to forgive you of your sin and take full control of your life. I want you just to go to that moment, wherever that was. Maybe it was at a church. Maybe it was at a youth camp. For some of you, it may have been here. Maybe it's in the old building. When was that moment when you prayed asking Jesus to forgive you of your sin, take full control of your life? For some of you, it may have been with your parents. Maybe for some of you grew up in church. I want you to go back to that moment. When you're there at that moment, when you prayed asking Jesus into your heart and your life, would you just raise your hand so I know that you're there? Just keep your eyes closed. Just raise your hand so I know that you're there. That moment when you asked Jesus into your life. You can put your hands down. Now I want you to think about what was going on in your life. That was a defining moment for you. What was it that was surrounding that decision? For some of you, you were going through some trouble and you realized that Jesus was your hope. For some of you, you were going through some pain, some difficulty, and you found Jesus and you turned your life over to him. Some of you were going through some transition in your life. Maybe it was death, maybe it was divorce, maybe it was a new home, a new place, a new church. Remember that moment? Now, while you're still there in that moment, I want to ask you to just think about the person that kind of helped lead you to Jesus. Maybe there was someone planting seeds. Maybe there was someone praying for you. Maybe there was someone that invited you to church. Maybe it was a spouse. Maybe it was a child. Maybe it was a mom, dad. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was a coworker. Maybe it was a neighbor. How many of you remember that person? When you remember that person, just kind of raise your hand. Would you just take a moment right now and say, God, thank you for sending this person in my life. God, thank you for bringing them in my life and so I could experience hope in Jesus. God, I found you, but you used that person. Thank you. I remember my person is Tim. I'm thankful for Tim that brought me to this relationship with God. Then I want you to say a prayer saying, God, thank you for sending Jesus. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the resurrection. Thank you for this new life in Jesus Christ. And I believe God has challenged some of you right now to be that person for someone else. Who are you impacting? Who are you infecting? Where are you sneezing? I believe God wants to use you to share the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ.